Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Extraordinary People, where I'll be chatting to someone who I consider extraordinary and someone who actually has some insight that the world needs to hear, and some information that can actually help you if you listen and take in the information. So I'm about to chat with Dr. James. She goes by the handle Dr. Carmen James. And yeah, she's got quite a lot of insight. And the topic today we'll be discussing is holistic health. What does it mean or what does it look like? She just joined in. Just give it a second. And there we go. Hello.
Hey. Hey, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
No problem. Thank you for joining me and actually agreeing to this.
Sure.
Um, I feel like from your social media alone, I've just learned like quite a lot, and you share quite a lot of information. And it just seems like you got a wealth of information that people need to hear, and it just suits exactly what I'm about right now.
Yay. Well, this is fantastic. I'm so pleased that you are having these types of conversations. So important for us to be talking about this stuff. So
Yeah,
good. Well done. I'm proud of you.
sweet. Thank you. So I think we'll start because I met you. I think I met you at Neil Green's comedy show,
Yes.
and I had a small chat with you. But I've learned like so much more from your social media. So I'll let you introduce yourself, and then I encourage anyone to follow you on your page. But just introduce yourself shortly, and then we can go straight into the topic.
Oh, awesome. Well, thanks so much. So, as you mentioned, I'm Dr. Carmen James. I'm an internal medical doctor and health coach. I especially love talking about things like lifestyle, cannabis medicine. But yeah, I really take a holistic approach to everything,
Yeah,
and so it's all about mind, spirit, emotions, all the things. Because
yeah,
into medical school, we learned a lot about diseases. So we learned a lot about, like, when things go wrong and what to do when
yeah.
things go wrong. But we didn't learn very much about, like, okay, so how do we actually keep people from things going wrong? So that's where my interest is. It's more preventive approach, and it's more
Yes.
about well as a whole. So that's a brief
Okay.
summary.
Perfect. I think you introed the topic very well. In that small introduction, is that like holistic health. Well, for me, let me start with what I look at holistic health personally. And you just like touched on there's so much more to holistic health than the traditional sense of health that we've been taught in schools. And obviously, you went to medical school and they taught you even further. But like this thing of health being, I coughed today, so then I must have the flu, go to the doctor, get medicine, and then it's done. That's the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
Uh, to me, it begins from like when you're a child, like the habits that you have that build into you that then become the person that leads you to the position where you get sick easily or you get that flu easily, and that flu lasts longer than it's supposed to last, and then the medication responds a certain way because of the choices you made years before, and it's like it's and the effects of that after, and continues in a cycle. So you can't look at it as a specific isolated incident, but you need to look at our health as a lifelong experience.
Oh, yeah.
So that's just like my take, and I'd love to, like, because I can see that your channel and you've been like preaching this and you just touched on it here.
Yeah.
um how does that look, especially because I've seen that you advocate things that are not traditional,
Oh.
um in terms of like what you expect from a doctor, like you advocate for cannabis health, and I love that because it's so cliche that people have this perception of certain things being, oh, that's for weed heads or that's for hippies, and it's not for educated person. Educated persons, that's not for them, you know. And I'd love to just go into that and what led you there and what got you to this kind of person that you are now.
Sure. So that's a fantastic question. And I like what you said about it not just being about like what you do now, it's actually a lifetime thing. But I'd like to even maybe take it a little bit further than that and say that your health today started from even before you were conceived, started from your mother's health, her mother's
Yeah,
health,
that's the
and that mother's health. Do you know what I mean? So
yes.
it's so important because now we have to prove things like something called epigenetics, which is a fascinating topic. If you ever want to have your mind blown by something, do some research.
Okay.
Because I think that a lot of the time, in fact, I was just speaking to a patient today who is recently diagnosed with diabetes, and he kind of was just saying, yeah, it's in my family, you know, my father had it and my brothers had it, and my brother actually died from uncontrolled diabetes, so it's in my family, it's genetic. And I think a lot of the time for chronic disease, we blame a lot of what we see today on our genes, and we say like, oh, you know, there's nothing that I can really do about it. But now we know that genes are probably only contributing about 5% to chronic illness, maybe even less than that. And then there's this whole, okay, so you maybe like think, okay, so what's the other 95%? Well, a lot of it's to do with lifestyle. But then there's also this component called epigenetics. Epigenetics basically means above the genes. And what that means is that it may not necessarily be the genetic code that's the problem. It's maybe what switches that genetic code on and off. So you, for example, could have genes, like actual genes in your DNA that code for diabetes. But whether those genes get switched on or off is as a result of epigenetics, which means the environment in which you live. And we know that we live in a toxic environment. We know that
toxic.
we have food that's toxic. We have cleaning detergents that are toxic. We have air that's toxic. We have water that's toxic. We're bombarded with toxins all day, every day. And our solution to chronic illness is medication. Like, how does that make sense? Like, it doesn't solve
more toxins.
It doesn't solve the problem. And that's where cannabis, and I do think that you're right, there's a lot of stigma still associated with speaking about cannabis and health. But this is where cannabis offers us a solution when it comes to wellness, as opposed to just treating disease. So when you look at the cannabis plant, really, you know, if you think about how stressed out your body must be, you know, you're stressed at work, you're stressed because of less finances, you're stressed because we're in a pandemic, you're stressed because you're eating toxic food, you're stressed because you're not drinking water, or the water is contaminated, you're breathing in filthy air, you know, you're bombarded with toxins. Cannabis offers us the ability to reduce that stress on the body on a biological level, because now we have evidence, we have proof that cannabis actually works inside our own bodies, what we call endocannabinoid system, which is a fancy way of saying basically the receptors inside our body where the cannabis plant, the components of the cannabis plant actually bind and thereby reduce stress in the body. So it's fascinating. I do think that the more we have these types of conversations about it, the more we're realizing from research how much data there is in plant medicine. I do think that the tide is actually turning, and we are finding that people are becoming a lot more interested in using alternatives as opposed to not this. You know, this is not to say that everyone who's diabetic needs to stop their medication and go light up a split.
No, no. I definitely agree.
But yeah, I mean, I literally stumbled across cannabis because I was interested in whole body health and wellness. And you can't have that conversation without talking about plant-based medicine. And one of the most powerful plants is cannabis. So
Yeah. So I was about to touch on that the cannabis point that you made, that it's plant-based medicine. It's not just cannabis. It's just that cannabis is obviously the most talked about, most popular
Yeah.
topic because it's controversial and has this history
Yes.
um, throughout the world as being this negative and dangerous substance. And
Yes.
I think with that said, this is how I feel, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. Like for example, I don't smoke cannabis personally, and part of the reasons why I don't smoke cannabis is because I feel like there's better ways of taking the benefits from the plant itself than to just smoke it.
Yeah.
So I use other forms like CBD oils and hemp products. Um, like my protein is a plant-based vegan protein supplement that I use that's made from hemp. It actually comes from cannabis.
Seeds.
So
Is it hemp
yes.
plant? Do you know?
Sorry.
Do you know if it's the hemp seeds? It must be seeds if it's a protein supplement. They must be making it from the seeds, the actual hemp seeds.
Yeah.
As a
So I'm not sure exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly which part of that. I just know that it's a hemp product because they've got it in the. Because I always try to read what's what's in what I use, and it's listed there. So it's I feel like there's with plant medicines and a lot of things that involve anything actually. Um, there's good and there's bad ways of using them, and I feel like the reason why cannabis has gotten a bad name is because it's been associated so heavily with the bad use. And unfortunately, it's what's going to keep on happening where you have social media doing its thing now, where it's like this connotation of when you look at someone using cannabis, it's I'm getting high. I'm so stupid. I forgot what I'm doing. I forgot my work. Oh man, look at me. I'm so like I just went stupid. Like it has this thing where you just feel like I'm gonna go stupid, and
Yeah.
and I feel like that is just the classic example of misuse of anything, like of any substance. Um, and unfortunately, it's also caused a problem where people not seeing the benefits in it. And there's, like you just mentioned now, and there's a lot of science to it explaining it right now, the benefits. And you just did your explanation, but it's like, how do we get past that negative? I don't know, from your perspective, how do you get past that
Mm.
negative um, perception and that negative use? Like how do you use it properly? Let's start there. What's the best ways of using it on a
Okay,
daily basis?
so that's a
Yeah.
good place to yeah. Sorry, I got cut off a little bit there. So yeah, that's a good place to start with. How do you use it safely? How to use it effectively?
Yeah.
And I do agree with you that smoking is not the best way to administer cannabis as medicine, right? Remember, we're talking about cannabis as
Yeah.
medicine here because you have the recreational use of cannabis, and people use cannabis recreationally for different reasons. Some people do use it as an escape. Some people use it to unwind, to have fun, to relax, to enjoy. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
Cannabis is medicine. When it comes to administering it as a plant-based medicine, it's generally advised that it's not smoked. And there are a few reasons for that. Part of the reason is because like pretty much 50% of the benefit of the plant is lost in combustion. So once you burn it, you're actually losing a lot of the medicinal
Mhm.
value. Other thing to be mindful of is that once anything is burning, you are going to be inhaling all the carcinogenic or potentially carcinogenic compounds that come from burning plant matter, right?
Mm.
The other thing is depending on how like fresh your cannabis is, mold is another thing, right? So you could be
Wow.
inhaling mold.
Oh, I
You
didn't
could
think
be
of that one.
inhaling bacteria, right? So you
Yeah.
don't want that in your. The other important thing about inhaling cannabis, like when you're burning the actual plant, is that a lot of people actually mix it with tobacco. And of course,
Yeah.
we know that tobacco definitely more harmful than cannabis, but
Way
certainly the
more from, yeah.
combination of the two is quite common. And so people end
Yes.
up taking in tobacco at the same time as cannabis, and that's not necessarily that good for you. So
Yes.
as a medical prescription, generally speaking, we advise against smoking. However, having said that, there are some things that are important to note with smoking cannabis, like medical cannabis. The first is that some people can't tolerate cannabis in other forms. They can only tolerate smoking it. And so we
Okay.
found in certain patients, for example, in the United States, where they have like widespread cannabis medicine clinics, there are some patients who literally can't administer cannabis any other way but by smoking it. The other important thing about it is that the effect takes place very quickly. So within 30 minutes, you've already got the effect of cannabis. And so it makes it easy for patients who are on medical cannabis to adjust their dosage if they're smoking, because then they know really quickly if they've had enough of a dose to reduce their symptoms.
Yeah.
The thing with so that's inhalational, right? So it's not recommended, but in some instances it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
Other methods that you can use, you mentioned your CBD oil, which I'm a huge proponent of it, and I speak a lot about it because it's legal in South Africa. Okay, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of still legislation, and we have to be very careful about what we tell people to take and that kind of thing. For
Yeah.
example, selling products with THC in them is actually not legal in the country. So CBD is an plant. It has fantastic properties: anti-inflammatory, helps with mood, helps with anxiety, helps with
Yeah.
pain, sleep. There's a bunch of different benefits from CBD. And generally speaking, we get CBD in like an oil preparation or
Yeah.
tincture. So you would generally be able to swallow it. I'm not sure what you do with your oil, but generally what I advise is that you put it under the tongue. And the reason for that is because it's absorbed into your bloodstream much quicker. It doesn't go through the gut. It doesn't take that long to be absorbed. Once it goes through the gut, looking at about 3 hours or so for effect to actually. I usually advise to put a few drops under the tongue, depending on your dosage. In South Africa, once again, there's a little bit of a sticky situation here because we're only allowed to recommend that patients take 20 milligrams of CBD a day, which if you look at the international guideline, that is a minuscule dose of CBD. But for now, we can prescribe. So that's the oil. Yeah. Another way that you can take CBD nowadays, even we have it accessible in South Africa, is through putting okay, let's maybe go to the one I was going to say just now, last. Another way is to put it on your skin, right? So CBD is fantastic. Okay. You can put it on your face, you can put it on like if you have inflammation, people with eczema, with psoriasis, you can apply it directly to your skin. And then in South Africa now, we have suppositories of cannabis, of CBD as well. So you can insert a suppository of cannabis, a CBD suppository, and it sounds funny, but the reason why it's so interesting that we have it available is because the reason why it works so well is, let's say you've got an issue in your lower tummy. Okay, common example, women with period pain, right? Menstruators with period pain.
Yeah.
You want the medication to go where it's needed. And so a suppository is really helpful because it's going directly to the pelvis. So yeah, that's another way of taking CBD. Edibles is obviously another one as well. So
yeah. Okay, that thank you for that, because like it's helpful. What you just told me just like makes so much more sense to me, because the way I've taken it is like by it's also something I want to touch on in terms of, like you pointed out, edibles and THC. Maybe you can explain this to me, because I always had this belief or this understanding that THC is the problem. CBD has the medical benefits, and then THC has that problematic side of things. I could be wrong, and this is why I'm asking you: is that true? Is that the case? And if so, how do you prevent like THC? Because I've had edibles before, and I won't lie to you, like on both occasions of when I've had edibles, and this is because probably like it was made from the raw plant. It wasn't made from the oil or whatever, or an extracted version. It probably had the THC. So I've always reasoned it out and saying, I have a bad reaction and I get paranoid. And I don't like being paranoid. It's not something I want, which is part of the reason why I don't smoke weed at all. So, but like whenever I've used CBD in other forms or as CBD, I've never had any issues. So maybe you can explain what is the difference, and maybe it's just in my head that I actually make the difference if there isn't.
No, it's definitely not in your head. So it's quite common for people to report paranoia when taking THC. So maybe if we can just go back a little bit, the cannabis plant has many variations. But essentially, no matter which type of cannabis you're talking about, the components of cannabis that are actually having an effect on you and that are interacting with your endocannabinoid system are things called cannabinoids. Now, there's over 130 different cannabinoids in the cannabis plant. But the two most common ones that we talk about are THC and CBD. Now, THC, as you rightfully mentioned, can sometimes cause paranoia in people. It depends on the user, it depends on how much, so the dose, it depends on where in the brain it actually binds and has its effect. So there's multiple different reasons why you may be experiencing that, but ultimately it is a relatively common thing for people who have that side effect to say that it's the THC that's actually causing the side effect. So you're not wrong in that. So the other thing that's important to note is that just because it causes euphoria doesn't make it bad. Coming back to this idea that cannabis has been stigmatized, it has been systematically stigmatized, and I usually get myself into a little bit of trouble with like people in my life who say like, "Are you sure you should be saying that? Because like that's, you know." But the truth of the matter is, here's the truth, right? The truth of the matter is that long before the war on drugs, cannabis was the primary medicine that doctors used. It was actually one of the only medicines that doctors had available to them. And unfortunately, the reason why cannabis, like the Marijuana Act of 1937, the reason why that act actually came into being was because of racism. It's a quite an interesting history, but basically the Mexicans came in marijuana plant, and it was, you know, they were using it, they were getting high and that kind of thing, and they didn't realize at the time, medicine realize that the same marijuana plant that they're using to get high is the same marijuana plant that they were using in their medicines. They didn't realize that. And they basically said, here's these Mexicans, they're coming in here, they're getting high, they're taking our women, let's make this plant illegal. So if you look back at the history and how that actually came about, you know, you know what I'm saying, right? So ultimately, and unfortunately, it's been reinforced. There was that massive war on drugs. Cannabis is a gateway drug. Cannabis is going to make you lose your mind. Cannabis, blah, blah, blah. Like you said, anything that's misused or abused is going to have negative side effects. Anything. Right? And so ultimately, just because THC has that psychoactive effect doesn't necessarily make it bad, but because we as humans have now manipulated the plant to make us more high when we're taking it, we've changed the whole biology of a plant that is actually a very powerful medicine. And so some of the things, for example, with paranoia, it may be that certain strains are not suited for you. It may mean that the dose of THC is too high in those edibles that you're consuming. But then another beautiful thing about plants, which is that things balance each other out in the plant. So if you take high doses of THC, you should be taking high doses of CBD as well, because CBD actually reduces the effect of THC. That's the reason why together, because they kind of balancing each other. So the moment you take a plant and you're like, I don't care about the CBD, I don't care about the other 130 cannabinoids in here, I just want to make the THC higher, you throw that whole plant out of balance, because now you're pushing up the THC level and there's nothing left to counteract that.
To balance it out.
So
Basically that explains it so well, because I've never understood why, because I always understood if it's natural, it should be good. And now that you explain that we've made it not good, we've cultivated, because I understand the science, it's GMO, basically, genetically modified, you call it GMW, genetically modified weed. It's because people have been orchestrating, creating different strains so that they can make it stronger with THC. So the euphoria part is the more the greater side. Yes, and for recreational purposes, and then you come across people using that form, and then obviously not seeing the benefit of the other side, which is the medical and the therapeutic side of it. And it actually makes sense why in different strains you have different experiences. Now it actually makes more sense.
Well, it's interesting that one of the first myths, because you see, on one hand, the pharmaceutical industry is saying that, you know, cannabis is bad, drugs are bad, like this is a drug and therefore it's bad and blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, the pharmaceutical industry holds patents on cannabis. So they have been, for the longest time, making medicines from the cannabis plant. And one of the earliest medicines that they made was a medicine called Marinol. And Marinol actually is a synthetic THC. And the reason why they made it was because of weight loss in late HIV and AIDS. So what they were noticing is that THC had the ability to increase your appetite. And so they found out that this was the actual component in cannabis that increased your appetite. They took it out, they synthesized it, and they were actually using it as medicine. So THC, you know, while it has euphoria, there are ways of consuming THC actually that will reduce the euphoria. This is another difference, I suppose, just very quickly, between inhaling the cannabis smoke and ingesting it, is that once the THC goes via the liver, it amplifies the THC. So if you were to eat the same dose of THC and smoke the same dose of THC, you wouldn't get the THC that you eat would be amplified because it goes through your liver when it's getting digested. So if you use a suppository, you're basically bypassing the liver and you're reducing the effect of THC, which is why edibles, I think, sometimes will make you so much higher than if you smoke.
That makes so much sense. So, okay. So now I think you've given us, or at least you've given me, a better understanding of the whole like cannabis. I don't want to be too obsessed and caught up with just cannabis, because that's just like one thing, and I know it's like a big thing, but we're talking about the whole holistic health element. So beyond the whole medicine and aspect. We talked about the preventative measures, like preventing. So like we've been talking about the medicinal benefits of uh, of weed and cannabis. Sorry, I'm gonna keep calling it by its colloquial term, weed. But if we want to look at the preventative steps, how do we how what's the best way to prevent yourself from being sick or from needing to this medicinal health medicine? Sorry.
So I usually focus on 6 things, and for me, these are like ultimately the 6 things that anybody, either with a chronic illness who's trying to heal their bodies, whether it's using medicine, like normal medicines, or whether they're just trying to reverse an illness. Maybe they're slightly hypertensive, their blood pressure slightly high, and they're trying to reduce it naturally. Or whether it's somebody who's actually healthy and young and fit and vibrant, and they actually want to keep themselves that way in the long run. I usually say that there's 6 things to focus on. And the first one, and I don't think, I don't think that we can talk about this topic enough, which is the food. So your diet, it's critical. It is, you can't eat food that's producing illness and expect to be well. And I know it's a little bit of a touchy subject, because there's so many things to consider when we talk about food. We need to talk about diet culture. We need to talk about body image. We need to talk about food insecurity. We need to talk about how expensive, like, healthy food is, So there's so many things to consider, but I like to just take a very simple approach. That 80% of the time, you're eating food that's going to produce health and well-being. And how do you know that that food is actually good? How do you know that that food is going to produce health? Well, it's whole food. It's food, actually food, and not food like supplements. Not food that, like, you can't tell what this thing was made of, or that the label has like 50 different ingredients that you can't even produce. We're talking vegetables, we're talking fruit, we're talking whole grains, we're talking food that is actually going to be nourishing your body and keeping you vital. And actually, because I think what's happened is that over the years, we've taken food, which is a basic human need, and food really is information, taken it to be this glorious, fancy treat that we have, and we've kind of almost perverted food in many ways. We've manipulated it, changed it, we've added chemicals, we've processed, we've added sugar and salt and oil. And the simpler we keep our food, the better. So it doesn't have to be expensive. You can go to farmers markets and purchase, vegetables, cook your own food at home. And try and eat as whole food as possible. I heard you talk about sugar on your gut health and your gut health session, and like one of the major things with food is that a lot of the food has so much sugar added, and just being mindful of how much sugar is in the food so nutrition is so important. The second one, which is also super important, and I also think that we've almost manipulated to mean something that it's really not supposed to mean, which is exercise. Now, I don't like to say exercise because I personally don't enjoy going to the gym. I don't like to feel like I'm putting my body under this undue pressure. I don't like to feel like I'm killing myself, and I don't. It doesn't make me feel good. Like that, some people will go to the gym and then afterwards they'll be like, "Oh, I can feel it in my arms and my leg." I don't like that. No. So I always encourage people to move more. just move your body, right? So instead of
Yeah.
sitting in between, do a bit of yoga, a bit of stretching, take a
Yeah.
walk, get out in nature, take your shoes off and put your feet on the ground. And to me, it's less about, you know, scheduling in those 30 minutes or 40 minutes in the gym 5 times a week than it is about trying to incorporate movement into your whole day.
Yeah.
And we've become obsessed with like, oh, I need to exercise, and the rest of the time you're like sitting on the couch or like sitting in your car or sitting at your desk. The more we sit, the less we move, the sicker we get. So movement is so important. The other thing is sleep. I don't know. One is a tough one. It's a tough one.
It's so tough, but it's so necessary.
So many people struggle, and you understand why, because we're living in such stressful times right now. And I think that, you know, the more stressed you are, the less sleep you're going to get. And it's becoming more and more difficult. Like one of the number one things that people tell me is I can't sleep. CBD helps, by the way. But
yeah, I was gonna mention,
but other things help too, right? So, okay, so getting good quality sleep and making sure that you're actually getting enough sleep is important. You know, for adults, generally 7 hours should be fine. But it's also about the quality of sleep. So whether it's taking CBD, yes, but it's also about like meditation, having a routine, sleeping at the same time every night, just making sure that you're unwinding before bed. Very important. Yes. And I think for a lot of people nowadays, especially, is on the phone just before you go and sleep. Not helping you.
Doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
It tells your brain not to switch on melatonin.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Because it's crazy. The things that you're pointing out now, for me personally, I've just started adopting it. Well, more seriously, like I've been spending a few months trying to get my sleep patterns right and getting them in the right order. But I've learned over time, like certain things are triggers to spoiling the whole sleep pattern. And one of the big ones is my phone. It's actually like a notification, for example, like just a notification, or the light coming on. Is something that actually can prevent, even if you don't check it, just your thought process now is like, what was that? Should I check? Should I not check? You immediately stop. Exactly. You know what I mean? And that curiosity puts you in a state that doesn't allow you to sleep. And another thing I have is that as a problem is like complete darkness. It's something that I had to learn to accept is the best way to sleep. Because I used to have this thing where I need my laptop on to sleep, or I need to have something playing for me to sleep. And usually I mean like a little bit of light from whatever's playing. And that little bit of light would affect my sleep pattern or my ability to sleep. Whereas if it was pitch blackness, I sleep much quicker. And I had to learn that like the hard way. And it's like, all these small things, even what you're saying, the ability to meditate before you sleep, just to meditate and clear your mind and not to like stress and to think about the next day or think about like your stresses or whatever's going on in your life, and just be able to meditate and think about the positive things and just, you know, like have that Zen mentality before you sleep makes a huge difference. The eating habits before you sleep, like I used to have this thing where like I have my snacks and then I go to sleep. And that was super bad because I didn't even realize that was bad. And it's like having to let go and say, okay, I'm going to stop eating around 6, 7 so I can sleep properly at 9, 10 and have this specific time that I know 10 o'clock I must be asleep has made a huge difference in my life. And I've learned a way of tricking my phone. I don't know how it notified me. I don't know if it was one of these iOS updates, but it actually gave me the opportunity to like activate my phone to go to sleep. Like it recognized that don't give me notifications, don't do anything after between these times. I need this much sleep in my life. Oh, it was in the health app. Sorry, there's an Apple health app, and if anyone has an Apple phone, they should try it. You can actually control your phone to like just give you your sleep and not give you notifications. It winds you down. It actually tells you like, okay, 45 minutes before you sleep now. So just stop doing whatever you need to do and just start relaxing. Like it gives you that notification, and then you start, okay, I need to get in the zone. It's almost my sleep time. But it makes a huge difference having a sleep time. It's something that sounds so stupid, because when you were like an adult, you're like, no one's gonna tell me how to sleep. No one's gonna tell me to sleep now. I'm an adult. I'm grown. And then it's like,
I'm grown.
But it helps.
Yeah. There was some method in the madness.
Yeah. But you learn the hard way when you're adult.
Who knew? Yeah, I that's a fantastic tip. I use the health app as well when I get that ding ding ding, which says like it's bedtime.
Yes.
Like, okay.
So
Whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh no, it's time already.
But it helps.
Yeah, it totally helps. And you know what you're saying is so profound, because people will come to me or a doctor or whoever it is, their homeopath or naturopath or whatever, expecting a quick fix or expecting like a silver bullet or some kind of thing that they're gonna say, like that's gonna be like, oh, it's the one thing that I need to do, and then everything's just gonna fall into place. And it's fake. It's not going to happen. And I think the idea that we can, just kind of neglect all these areas in our lives and just hope that there's something that's going to fix it all quickly. But as you're saying, it's like tiny things that seem small, they seem insignificant, seem like they're stupid, but they're so powerful. I love this saying that says, small hinges swing big doors. Love it. Because it tells us that it doesn't matter how small the step seems to be, and it doesn't have to be complicated. So
that's so true. Even though the saying is not quite correct from my experience with hinges, because carpentry on the side, but yeah, it totally makes sense in this aspect. So like it's amazing. I've been enjoying this conversation. It's really helpful conversation. So just to recap on what we spoke about, because I like to close off the chat before the hour finishes, because then I won't be able to post it on IGTV. It's basically to prevent a situation where you need medicine, or preventative health would be exercise, which is any form. It doesn't have to be strenuous. Any form of exercise, yoga, stretching. Stretching was another thing that you pointed out. Like, I love stretching. I had to learn the benefits of stretching only last year, and they made a huge difference in my life and my health. I did not know how important stretching was. It all seems stupid. Like, I go to the gym, pump weights and do all that hectic stuff, and you're thinking like, yeah, that I'm getting gains. That's the gains. And it's like, and then they talk about stretching, like, who needs stretching? Like, why must I stretch? And I never understood, like, it was causing a lot of problems that I had for a long time, until I saw a chiropractor friend of mine, actually Kyle Dage, is a musician as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so I saw him, and he did the whole test, and he was testing my mobility and everything. He said, bro, do you ever stretch? And I said, no. He's like, hey, bro, you got a problem here. And he had to like give me the straight up, like, just stretch. And he's like, because right now your back problems that you're telling me about, your lower back problems, they're going to get worse because you're not stretching. And this part of your hamstring is too tight, and it's going to cause other problems in your life going forward. And then I was just like, okay, cool. After the consultation, I was like, okay, let me take stretching serious. Let me just try. And I swear I never had back problems again. Like it never happened. After I started taking stretching seriously, this thing
Wow.
that I thought was going to be a lifelong thing, which is like, I thought it's just normal to have back problems from time to time. And I thought it's just normal to have my shoulder pop out, because my shoulder used to pop out a lot, especially when I used to perform. It used to pop out all the time. And I was like, okay, this is just an injury and I'm going to live with it for the rest of my life. Stretching, it stopped doing that. I stopped having that problem. It's still not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was. And it's those like small things that you think are stupid that have made the biggest difference in my life. And then also eating habits. Like I've learned a lot of eating habits that I had that were bad. Like the food that I eat, just the stuff you're mentioning now, eating whole foods and actually eating stuff that's actually good for me, beyond just saying, you know what, I need a processed version of it because I don't like cauliflower. You know, I don't like broccoli, so I'm not going to eat that. And, you know, you have this thing where you're like, no, but I'm just saying, like, you have this thing against whole foods. And then when you start incorporating it and you're saying, you know what, I'm actually going to bite the bullet and just add it in, you realize it's not that bad. It actually tastes good. And that you've been like desensitized or sensitized into believing it's bad or it's worse than it actually is, you know? And it's like, it becomes normal after a while. It's like, I need it. Actually, it tastes a lot better with it in the meal versus without it. And it's just like switching.
Crave good food.
Yes. So like you just switch. So it's a matter for me. I've learned switching, just doing that switch. It's uncomfortable in the beginning, but in the long run, it becomes a habit and becomes like so normal to you that even when someone like talks to you about something, you're like, you just think of it as nothing. And then someone's like, wow, do you actually do that? You do that? You do? And I'm like, yeah. And then it's like, oh, sorry, this is not normal for everyone else. I forgot that. Like, this is now become a habit for me. And I would probably conversate with myself 5 years ago, and the 5 years ago version of myself would probably think I'm a crazy person and be like, dude, what the hell happened to you? What the hell? Who are you? You know what I'm saying? And it was all small steps. And it's like, it's such a massive difference, but it was all small steps. So yeah, so it's food, exercise, sleep. Yeah, I think those are 3 things I can leave people with, to like try and investigate those things and learn as much as they can to prevent any health issues in the future of their lives and just a better life. Thank you so much.
Mind, body, soul, emotions, all of the things. Even if you just start with one thing, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Like I hear you saying that you're trying all these things, and people listening may think like, oh my gosh, now I have to do yoga and stretch and like, sleep and it's too much. Start with one thing.
Yeah.
Like pick one change, stick with it, make it a habit until it's automatic, and then work from there. So
yeah,
your body will.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That's so true. One step at a time. One thing I can say, because I can see a lot of people who are feeling touched about our weed subject and cannabis talk. Before I sign out, I just need to make it clear to people. Yes, me personally, I do not smoke weed, and I don't believe in it. But I don't judge anyone that does. Like, I understand, and like we spoke about, there is benefits to it in doing it the right way. But one thing I can guarantee, I am definitely heavily against tobacco and mixing it with tobacco. So if you're one of those people who smoke weed, I will highly recommend, if you leave this chat today, just cut the tobacco, please. At least just for your own good.
I agree with you on that. That's a huge, huge, huge one. Yeah, totally agree.
And with that, I think we can definitely wrap it up. Thank you so much again, Dr. James. I don't know if you prefer being referred to as Dr. James or Dr. Carmen James or just Carmen.
Here's my name. I'm literally so chill. Call me Carmen. We will be friends. Like, it's so good.
Sweet.
So.
Okay. I think I'll just always drop the doctor in there just so that people know I know people with things. Anyway, thank you again. Cool. Much appreciated. If anyone has any questions, please just drop in the IGTV comment section or the YouTube. This will be on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. So wherever you can, and I'll try and tag my friend Dr. Carmen James, and hopefully she'll be able to reply. But beyond that, just please try and follow her on her page. She's got a lot of amazing stuff that you share. Keep doing the good work. Really appreciate you and what you're doing. And I'll definitely will invite you again for another chat in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Come back.
Stay blessed.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and take care to all of your listeners, and thank you. You keep up the good work, because this is fantastic. Well done.
Cool. Thank you to everybody that joined. That was Dr. Carmen James. Like I said, please follow her, and we'll be back again with another episode whenever, wherever, because I just go with the times that are given to me by the people I want to talk to. But like I said, this will be shared on all the platforms, so you can listen to it in your own time, whenever you can, on your Apple, Spotify, YouTube, whatever you listen to. And I'm signing out. Aewon Wolf away.